The 18th century in Europe was an age of powdered wigs, glittering courts, and the cold, hard calculus of power. It was an era where reason and enlightenment battled with ancient superstitions in the salons of Paris and the palaces of Vienna. Yet, beneath the veneer of civilization and progress, a deeper, more primal fear persisted. A fear given form in the legend of a spectral woman cloaked in white. She was known by many names, but to the most powerful dynasties of the continent, she was simply and terrifyingly the White Lady. This was not a singular ghost, but a phenomenon, a recurring omen whose appearances were meticulously recorded in family chronicles and state documents with the same grim certainty as births and deaths. Her arrival was never a matter of chance. It was a supernatural bulletin, a herald of impending doom for the blue-blooded and the mighty. The archetype of the White Lady is a ghostly figure of a woman, eternally clad in a flowing white gown, often interpreted as a burial shroud, a wedding dress forever unworn, or the habit of a penitent. Her legend is a pervasive strand in the global tapestry of folklore, from the weeping La Llorona of Latin America to the vengeful Yurei of Japan. However, in the context of 18th and 19th century European nobility, her role was uniquely specific. She transformed from a general specter of tragedy into a precise aristocratic portent. Her hauntings were not confined to dusty attics or forgotten graveyards. She walked the polished corridors of power, her silent passage a stark contradiction to the bustling life of a royal court. The most documented and feared of these apparitions was the White Lady associated with the mighty House of Hohenzollern, the future rulers of the German Empire. Her story is a mosaic of tragedy, and its most commonly cited foundation is the horrifying tale of Countess Kunigunde of Orlamunde from the 14th century. As the legend goes, the widowed countess desired to marry the handsome Albert of Nuremberg. When he allegedly remarked that only 4 eyes stood between them, the lovelorn Kunigunde misinterpreted his words. Believing he referred to her 2 young children, she committed the ultimate sin. She had them murdered. Instead of winning his heart, her monstrous act earned only his revulsion and rejection. Devastated and guilt-ridden, she retreated from the world, spending her remaining years as the abbess of the Himmelskron monastery, her white robes now a symbol of her penance, not her purity. But death provided no escape. It was said that her spirit, forever trapped in the white habit of her order, began to appear within the castles of the Hohenzollern dynasty, to which Albert belonged. Her manifestations were not random hauntings. They were a supernatural early warning system for death. The first officially recorded sighting within the dynasty occurred in the Berlin City Palace in the year 1598, just before the death of Johann George, Elector of Brandenburg. This established a pattern that would echo through the centuries. The White Lady was seen again in 1618, before the passing of Elector Johann Sigismund, who himself had anxiously inquired of his chaplain if the spirit had been spotted. The court chaplain's own writings revealed that the ghost's existence was not debated. She had been seen by individuals of all ages and conditions. The only question was her intention. Was she a malevolent force, or a benevolent, if grim, warning? This spectral reputation solidified throughout the 17th and 18th centuries. In 1667, Electress Louise Henrietta herself reported seeing the White Lady sitting in a chair in her bedchamber, writing. The apparition arose, bowed, and vanished, and the Electress was dead soon after. The soldier king, Friedrich Wilhelm I, is said to have seen the spirit while drinking a bowl of beer, calmly set it down, stated, "Well, we must be going," and died that very night. Even the great skeptic, Frederick the Great, was not immune to the legend's power. He openly scoffed at the tales, yet he was known to have painted a picture of the White Lady, and in a famous anecdote embarked on a midnight ghost hunt through the Old Schloss with the philosopher Voltaire, an expedition that left the usually rational Voltaire in a state of abject terror.
The belief in the omen was so potent that it could kill on its own. The legend of the White Lady had transcended folklore. It had become a self-fulfilling prophecy, a psychological weapon woven into the very fabric of dynastic destiny. The White Lady was more than a ghost. She was a curse woven into the lineage of kings, but her influence was not confined to the German states. From the snow-covered peaks of Bohemia to the elegant palaces of Russia, similar figures emerged, each with their own tragic history, each serving the same dreadful purpose. The pattern of death was repeating itself across the continent, and the shadow of the white clown was falling upon new houses. To follow the trail of this eternal omen and uncover the story of the most famous White Lady of them all, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you never miss a moment of the revelation.
While the White Lady of the Hohenzollerns was a stark harbinger of death, another specter, equally famous but with a more complex nature, haunted the ancient castles of Bohemia. This was the White Lady of the Rosenberg family, known affectionately as Bílá paní, the White Lady. Her story, rooted in the harsh realities of the 15th century, presents a different facet of the legend, not merely an omen, but a tragic figure forever bound to her lineage, acting as both a guardian and a warning. The historical basis for this spirit is widely believed to be Perchta of Rosenberg, a noblewoman born around the year 1429. Perchta's life was a chronicle of sorrow and resilience. Married off in 1449 to the notoriously cruel nobleman Jan of Liechtenstein, her existence became a nightmare of humiliation and abuse. Her father was reluctant to pay her full dowry, and her husband, feeling cheated, took out his frustrations on his young wife. For over 2 decades, Perchta endured his tyranny. 32 of her letters survive to this day, filled with vivid and heartbreaking descriptions of her suffering and the mistreatment she endured. They are a rare and poignant testament to the plight of a woman trapped in a merciless political marriage. The legend holds that as her wretched husband lay dying, he asked for her forgiveness. Perchta, her spirit hardened by years of pain, refused. In his final moments, the cruel man cursed her, condemning her soul to find no peace in the afterlife. And so, after her death in 1476, Perchta's spirit returned. She began to appear in the castles and chateaux that once belonged to the Rosenberg dynasty. Rosenberg, Český Krumlov, Jindřichův Hradec, and Telč. Clad in a white dress, often with a set of keys jingling at her belt, she became a familiar and even protective presence. Unlike the terrifying apparition of Berlin, the White Lady of Rosenberg was often benevolent. Stories tell of her watching over the children of the family, gently rocking their cradles in the dead of night. The household servants, far from fearing her, knew her as a gentle guardian. Her legend includes a tale where a new frightened nanny screamed upon seeing the ghost, causing the White Lady to vanish through a wall. She never returned to watch over that particular child, who grew up to be the last lord of the dynasty, Peter Vok. Some whispered that by driving away the family's protector, the nanny had inadvertently sealed the fate of the Rosenberg line. However, Perchta's ghost also served as a traditional omen, though her warnings were more nuanced than the simple appearance of her Hohenzollern counterpart. The White Lady of Rosenberg communicated her prophecies through the color of her gloves. If she was seen wearing black gloves, it signified an imminent death in the family. The appearance of red gloves was a dire warning of a coming fire, a constant threat in wooden-beamed castles. But if she was seen smiling, it promised good fortune and luck. This system of symbols made her a more complex and perhaps more merciful spectral figure. She did not just announce doom, she offered warnings that could potentially be heeded, and she promised blessings as well. The most tantalizing aspect of her legend is the story of a hidden treasure.
It is said that the adult Peter Vuk, upon hearing the story of the ghost visiting his childhood, ordered the walls she had passed through to be broken down. Inside, a fabulous treasure was supposedly discovered. Furthermore, a popular legend persists that Perikta's soul can be freed and her hidden riches claimed by whoever can decipher a mysterious inscription on an old portrait of her. This has, for centuries, driven treasure hunters and fortune seekers to the castles of Bohemia, all hoping to solve the riddle and end the gentle lady's eternal vigil. From a tragic historical figure to a beloved, if sorrowful, guardian spirit, the story of Perikta of Rosenberg shows the adaptability of the White Lady legend. She was not just an omen of death, but a symbol of enduring familial bonds. A spirit whose love for her kin transcended the grave itself, a poignant reminder that even in the darkest legends, a spark of humanity can still glow. The White Lady of Rosenberg proves that not all phantoms are mere messengers of doom. Some are woven into the very soul of a family, their stories a complex blend of tragedy and tenderness. But what happens when the legend crosses paths with the unstoppable force of the modern age, with rulers who championed reason above all? The confrontation between enlightenment and the occult is about to reach its peak. To discover how the White Lady faced her greatest skeptic, the legendary Frederick the Great of Prussia, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for the next chapter.
The 18th century, the Age of Enlightenment, was defined by its championing of reason, science, and a fierce rejection of superstition. Its luminaries, Voltaire, Diderot, Kant, sought to illuminate the world with the lamp of knowledge, banishing the shadows where monsters and phantoms thrived. It was in this intellectual climate that the legend of the White Lady faced its most formidable adversary, Frederick II, known to history as Frederick the Great, King of Prussia from 1740 to 1786. A philosopher king, a flutist, a correspondent of Voltaire, Frederick embodied the Enlightenment ideal. He was a man who prided himself on his rationality and his disdain for what he considered the childish fears of his predecessors. Yet, the story of his relationship with the White Lady is a fascinating paradox, revealing that even the most resolute minds could be touched by the cold finger of the unknown. Frederick the Great openly and publicly mocked the family specter. He dismissed the centuries of sightings within the Berlin Palace as the products of hysterical servants and suggestible minds. For a king who built his state on discipline and logic, the idea of a death omen in a white dress was an absurdity, an embarrassment to a modern monarchy. His bravado, however, may have been a carefully constructed facade. Historical accounts suggest that Frederick was, in fact, quietly obsessed with the legend. It is recorded that he took the time to paint a picture of the White Lady, which he then gave to his sister. This was not the act of a man who had entirely dismissed the subject from his thoughts. It was the behavior of someone preoccupied, even fascinated by the very thing he claimed to despise. The most famous anecdote concerning Frederick and the ghost perfectly captures this tension. Sometime in the middle of the 18th century, the king decided to confront the legend head-on. Together with his friend and guest, the philosopher Voltaire, they embarked on a midnight investigation of the Berlin Palace. Armed with candles, the two most brilliant minds of the age traipsed through the dark, echoing halls of the Schloss, a building notorious for its sprawling, labyrinthian layout. They were searching for proof, not to confirm the ghost's existence, but to debunk it once and for all. The expedition, however, ended in a manner that supported the skeptics only through technicality. No White Lady was formally sighted, but at one point during their search, Frederick and Voltaire became separated in the darkness. The king, turning a corner, momentarily lost his companion. What happened next has become the stuff of legend. Voltaire, the great atheist intellectual, was suddenly seized by a paralyzing, irrational terror. He reportedly dashed madly across rooms, upsetting furniture and creating a clamor in his blind panic to escape the oppressive silence and shadows. Frederick found the entire episode amusing, but it revealed a profound truth. The atmosphere of the haunted palace, the weight of its history, and the power of its stories could shake the nerves of even the most steadfast rationalist. The critical question, of course, is whether Frederick the Great ever actually saw the omen himself. Most historical sources agree that he did not. He lived a long and militarily active life, seemingly untouched by the spectral curse that had claimed so many of his forebears. This fact was likely held up by the king and his supporters as final proof of the legend's falsehood. However, a persistent counter-narrative exists. Some accounts claim that shortly before his death in 1786, his queen and her entire household witnessed the apparition of the White Lady looking out from one of the palace windows. If true, it would mean the omen had come for the great skeptic after all. Whether this sighting was a genuine paranormal event, a collective hallucination born of fear, or a later invention by storytellers, it completes a deeply ironic circle. Frederick the Great spent a lifetime defining himself in opposition to the superstition of the White Lady, but his name and his story are now irrevocably intertwined with hers. His attempts to rid his dynasty of its ghost only added another rich, complex layer to its enduring mystery, proving that some legends are far too powerful for any king, no matter how enlightened, to simply dismiss. Frederick the Great tried to use reason to silence a centuries-old echo, but the legend only grew stronger. The White Lady had survived the Enlightenment, but her world was on the brink of a revolution that would shatter the very thrones she haunted. As the 18th century gave way to the 19th, the Phantom would make her appearances in new and unexpected settings, from a Russian palace to an Estonian fortress, proving her adaptability and her enduring, terrifying relevance. The saga of the Omen is far from over. To follow her into the age of revolution and empire, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for the next chapter.
As the 18th century matured, the legend of the White Lady, like a cultural virus, spread beyond the German heartlands, carried by the interconnected web of European aristocracy. It found fertile ground in the vast and often brutal empire of Russia, where the court of the Romanovs in St. Petersburg mirrored the splendor and intrigue of Versailles. Here, in a city built on a swamp by the sheer will of Peter the Great, the Western specter was translated into a new, distinctly Russian key. The most famous account involves not a medieval curse, but a direct and terrifying personal encounter with the iron-willed Emperor Nicholas I in the elegant Anichkov Palace, located at the intersection of Nevsky Prospect and the Fontanka River embankment. The Anichkov Palace itself had a curious history that perhaps made it susceptible to supernatural phenomena. Initially built by Empress Elizabeth for her favorite, Count Razumovsky, it never truly felt like a home. Later, Catherine the Great gifted it to her own favorite, Prince Potemkin, but he too could not bear to live within its walls for more than a few days. The palace seemed to reject its masters, standing empty for almost half a century until it found its first comfortable resident in Emperor Nicholas I, who made it his beloved residence. It was here, in a setting of imperial power, that the palace decided to present its occupant with a chilling gift. The incident occurred late one evening. The emperor, a man known for his military discipline and imposing stature, was alone when he noticed a strange shimmering blur on one of the walls. As he approached to investigate, the blur coalesced, transforming before his eyes into the form of a beautiful woman clad in a white gown. This was no distant, fleeting shadow. This was an immediate, palpable presence. The reaction from the stalwart Tsar was instantaneous and visceral. A profound terror seized him, so powerful that he suddenly found himself unable to breathe and lost the ability to speak. The phantom then did something that elevated the encounter from a mere sighting to a personal haunting. It drew close and whispered a few indistinct words directly into the ear of the paralyzed monarch before dissolving into the air. The aftermath of this event left a permanent scar on Nicholas I. He later confessed that in his state of sheer panic, he had been unable to decipher the words the White Lady had spoken. But the physical manifestation of his fear lingered. For the rest of his life, the emperor was reportedly plagued by sudden, inexplicable attacks of suffocation. The encounter had transcended the psychological and imprinted itself upon his very body. The evil tongues of the court, as they are so often called in history, whispered that what Nicholas had seen was the ghost of a woman from the line of Smirnov, or perhaps another tragic figure from the annals of St. Petersburg. But the story was firmly established. The White Lady had come to the Tsar of all Russia. This event demonstrates the legend's power to attach itself to new locations and new dynasties, feeding on the existing aura of a place. The Anichkov Palace, with its history of rejected residents, provided the perfect stage, and the formidable Nicholas I, the perfect dramatic foil. His vulnerability in the face of the apparition served as a powerful reminder that no amount of temporal power could shield a mortal from the terror of the unknown. The phantom's visit to the Russian Tsar proved her reach was limitless, but her manifestations were not always confined to grand palaces or to the high nobility. In the fortified walls of a monastery in a small Estonian town, another White Lady was born from a tale of forbidden love and brutal punishment, a story that shows the legend's deep roots in human passion and injustice. The journey continues to the Baltic coast, where a different kind of sorrow echoes through the stones. To uncover the tragic love story of the White Lady of Haapsalu, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for the next chapter.
While the White Ladies of Germany and Russia haunted the powerful, serving as omens for kings and czars, the archetype also flourished in more humble, though no less tragic settings. These stories often feature women who were victims of cruel and unjust punishments, their spirits forever bound to the site of their suffering. One of the most poignant and beautifully sorrowful versions of this legend comes from the small coastal town of Haapsalu in Estonia, where the ghost is not a countess or a queen, but a nameless maiden whose crime was to love. The legend, set in the medieval bishop's castle of Haapsalu, tells of a young canon of the monastery who broke his vows of celibacy. He felt deeply in love with a beautiful local girl. Desperate to be near her but unable to leave the monastery, he devised a dangerous plan. He smuggled the girl into the fortress, disguising her as a young male choir boy. For a time, their ruse was successful. They lived in secret within the holy walls, their love hidden from the eyes of the world. But such deceptions are rarely sustainable. The critical mistake came one day when the girl, perhaps longing for a moment of normalcy or simply unaware, went to bathe in the castle's lake. It was there, on the shore, that she was seen by several of the other brothers. The disguise was shattered, and their sin was laid bare. The consequences were swift and merciless, dictated by the harsh ecclesiastical laws of the time. The couple was immediately arrested and sentenced to death for their transgression. The monk faced a gruesome end, thrown into a pit with wild beasts. The girl, however, was subjected to an even more horrifying fate, one that became a common motif in medieval punishment legends. She was walled up alive within the thick stone of the chapel itself. As a final cruel mockery of her suffering, the executioners are said to have left her with a small piece of bread and a jug of water before sealing the last stone, a gesture that only prolonged her agony. It was said that her heart-rending screams and whimpers could be heard by the townspeople for days afterwards, a haunting sound that eventually faded into an eternal silence. It is from this brutal act of immurement that the White Lady of Haapsalu was born. Her spirit, eternally clad in the white her innocence, or perhaps her shroud, is said to wander the forlorn corridors of the monastery, where she experienced both her greatest happiness and her most profound despair. Unlike the roaming phantoms of the Hohenzollerns, her hauntings are localized, a classic ghost tied to a specific tragic location. The legend has been embraced and refined over the centuries, adding a layer of ethereal beauty to the horror. It is now said that on clear nights of the August full moon, her spectral figure can be seen gazing out from the baptistry window of the chapel, forever mourning her lost love and her stolen life. In some versions of the tale, it is even claimed that her image is mystically reflected on the inner wall of the chapel under the moonlight, a permanent spectral imprint of her sorrow. The story of the Haapsalu Maiden completes the thematic journey of the White Lady legend. It shows that the core of the phenomenon is not merely about death, but about profound loss, injustice, and the destruction of love. She is a ghost born from a universal human tragedy, making her relatable and her story enduring. She is not an omen coming for the highborn, she is a victim, a reminder of the cruelty that humanity is capable of, and a symbol of love that was so powerful not even death could completely extinguish it. Her quiet, localized haunting provides a stark contrast to the dynastic warnings of the other White Ladies, proving that the most powerful ghosts are often those born from the simplest and most human of stories. The tale of the Haapsalu Maiden shows the legend's emotional core, but what is the scientific and psychological truth behind these centuries of sightings? As the world moved into the 20th century, the White Lady would be subjected to the cold light of modern inquiry. Do the sightings continue? What forces, real or imagined, create such a persistent and universal phantom? The final chapter separates fact from folklore and delves into the mind itself to explain the enduring power of the woman in white. To understand the ultimate truth behind the legend, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for the final, revealing installment.
The chronicles of European nobility are filled with their documented sightings, and the folk traditions of countless cultures are rich with their stories. But as the world plunged into the 20th and 21st centuries, an age of science, skepticism, and psychological understanding, the legend of the White Lady did not simply fade away. It evolved, adapting to new environments and facing new forms of scrutiny. The question is no longer merely, is she real? But why does this specific phantom persist with such power across time and culture? The answer lies at the intersection of historical tragedy, psychological archetypes, and the very nature of how we process fear and grief. The most immediate and rational explanations for White Lady sightings often point to the realm of psychology. The power of suggestion in a location reputed to be haunted is immense. A visitor to Hohenzollern Castle or the ruins of Haapsalu, already primed by the legends, is far more likely to interpret a trick of the light, a shadow, or a mundane sound as something supernatural. Furthermore, the state of sensory deprivation experienced in dark, silent castles can play havoc with the human mind. The brain, struggling to process limited information, may fill the voids with patterns and figures from its own subconscious, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. In the context of the noble courts, the belief in the omen itself could become a self-fulfilling prophecy, the psychological stress on a prince who believed he had seen the White Lady, as in the alleged case of Frederick the Great's father being frightened by a figure in a sheet, could induce a fatal shock or a fever, thus ensuring the legend's credibility. From a folkloric and anthropological perspective, the White Lady serves a crucial societal function. She is a universal archetype, a symbol that gives form to our deepest anxieties about death, betrayal, and lost love. Scholars like those cited in the search results suggest she represents the collective sorrow of forgotten women in history, victims of betrayal, violence, or rigid social structures whose individual stories have been lost, leaving only their archetypal, grieving form behind. She gives a face to the abstract concept of tragedy. In her role as an omen, she provides a narrative structure for the unpredictable nature of death, especially within powerful families. Her appearance creates a cause for an effect that otherwise has none, bringing a grim sense of order to the chaos of mortality. In the modern era, the legend has found new life. The White Lady has become a staple of global popular culture, from ghost stories in the Philippines to famous American phantoms like Resurrection Mary in Chicago, a young woman in a white party dress who haunts the road where she was killed in the 1930s. Paranormal investigation teams, armed with electromagnetic field meters and digital voice recorders, now routinely investigate locations known for White Lady activity, such as Belmont Manor in Maryland, where investigators claim to have communicated with a reclusive woman in white using light-up toys. The language used to describe her has also evolved, incorporating pseudo-scientific terms like energy and intelligent haunts to fit a more technologically oriented worldview. Ultimately, the enduring power of the White Lady lies in her profound versatility and emotional resonance. She is a blank slate, a spectral figure upon which any culture, any family, or any individual can project their own specific fears and tragedies. Whether she is the penitent Countess Kunigund, the betrayed Perta of Rosemenberg, the walled-in maiden of Haapsalu, or the hitchhiking Resurrection Mary, her story is always one of profound loss. She is a permanent fixture in the human psyche because she embodies the things we fear most: the consequences of our sins, the pain of love severed, and the inexorable approach of death itself. She is more than a ghost. She is a timeless cautionary echo, a reminder that the past is never truly dead, and that our deepest sorrows can sometimes take on a life of their own. The investigation is complete, but the mystery is eternal. The White Lady is a legend woven from history, psychology, and the raw material of human fear. She has survived the rise and fall of empires, the dawn of reason, and the advent of science. Her story is, in the end, our story. If you are drawn to the shadows where history and mystery meet, if you seek tales that challenge the boundaries of our understanding, then your journey does not end here. We are always exploring the deepest enigmas of the human experience. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. The next revelation is waiting just beneath the surface.